The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
After 9 years of NDP-Liberals, taxes up, costs up, crimes up, and time is up on the Prime Minister's costly carbon tax. And yesterday, once again, the Parliamentary Budget Officer reaffirmed again that Canadians are out when it comes to the tax. If you add up their two carbon taxes, and of course they tax the tax with GST, it will cost households anywhere between $900 to $2,000 per year. So if the government is so sure of their plan to quadruple the carbon tax, why would they let Canadians decide in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was indeed a momentous day for Canada because yesterday the Pharmacare Bill became law in this country. This means hope for 12 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker, for those affected by diabetes, for women struggling with the cost of contraception. Help is now on the way. For the first time ever in Canadian history, the Government of Canada will be helping to bring down the cost of medication, helping Canadians with their affordability. Mr. Speaker, it's a historic day which we should all celebrate in this place.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
What is happening in this country is nothing to celebrate. For the first time in this country, we have 2 million visits to food banks per month. That's 24 million visits, record shattering in this country. We have thousands of encampments that have popped up in every part of the country. There are children struggling to get meals. 1 in 4 are skipping meals because of the carbon tax and their plan to quadruple it. At the end of the day, this is no coincidence, Mr. Speaker. It's because they keep driving up the carbon tax. When can we just have a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide on the future to axe the tax?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, a few days before Thanksgiving, I think all of us have tremendous compassion for all Canadians who are struggling to make ends meet. But on this side of the House, we know that the best guarantee of a good life for a family is a good job. And that's why we want to celebrate the fact that we learned this morning that in September, Canada added 47,000 new jobs. Unemployment fell. And every single one of those new jobs, Mr. Speaker, was in the private sector.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Well, yesterday's report from Stats Canada was nothing to celebrate. They confirmed that income inequality after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government has never been higher. The gap increased by 50% between the richest and poorest Canadians, the highest it's ever been on record. And after 9 years, when this Prime Minister promised to help the middle class and those working hard to join it, there are now millions of Canadians that will never be able to join the middle class because of their ever-increasing taxes like the carbon tax. Why can't we have a carbon tax election for Canadians to decide if they want to quadruple a carbon tax or axe it entirely?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
You know, Mr. Speaker, the only party in this House that voted against tax fairness has a lot of gall getting up and talking about income inequality. We are the party that fights every single day for the middle class. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to say that part of the jobs news we had today was wages. Wages have now outpaced inflation for 20 months in a row.
Hear, hear.
A good job and a good wage, that is a recipe for middle-class success in Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up for this Liberal carbon tax grab. New data confirms that Alberta families will be worse off by nearly $2,000 after the carbon tax is quadrupled. That's money coming out of Alberta into government pockets to pay off the Liberal insiders. Will the Prime Minister apologize for the public smearing of the Independent Budget Officer for telling the truth? And finally call the carbon tax election.
Let's go.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, but it's just on page 1. The Conservatives clearly didn't get past the table of contents. It says clearly the PBO estimates that the average household in each backstop province will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada Carbon Rebate than the total amount that they pay in the federal carbon charge. Mr. Speaker, October 15th is next week, and that's when Canadians will receive their next installment of the Canada Carbon Rebate, and that's good news because it's supporting their affordability. Mr. Speaker, interest rates are down, inflation is down, emissions are down. This plan is working. When will the Conservatives get it?
The honourable member from Regina, Westana.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, time is up, and the carbon tax is way up. Yesterday, the Parliamentary Budget Officer released an updated carbon tax report that shows that once the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax, Saskatchewan families will be paying $2,000 per year. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide if they want to continue to pay his carbon tax?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And just a reminder to the constituents in my colleagues' riding in Saskatchewan, they'll be receiving $376 on October the 15th for a family of 4. And that's good news for affordability, Mr. Speaker, because 8 out of 10 families across Canada get more back for the Canada Carbon Rebate than they pay. But it seems like the Conservatives don't want to talk about the economy anymore, and it's probably because Canada's economy is doing really, really well. We added 47,000 jobs in September alone. Interest rates are down because inflation is down. Gas prices are down and emissions are down, Mr. Speaker. But the Conservatives don't want good news. They don't want to cheer for Canadians. They just want bad news stories.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois supported the Liberals in their inflationary spending spree almost 200 times. Quebecers are turning to food banks. Ordinary people are facing homelessness, grandparents unable to pay their rent, students having to sleep in homeless shelters. It costs $1,743 a month to rent a one-bedroom in Montreal. This country needs more competence, and Conservatives are ready to set things straight. Will the government give Canadians a choice and call an election? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, we are pleased about the great news my colleague has shared this morning. Pharmacare is now the law in Canada. Joblessness is now rapidly declining and wages are up. The only thing declining is the number of public servants that will be needed to make Conservative cuts. The Conservatives should be transparent, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. The Bloc Québécois isn't exactly boasting about supporting the Liberal government almost 200 times, Mr. Speaker. The government that has centralized power more than any in history. This government spends without scruples. It drove up inflation. In Montreal, you need to earn $59,000 to rent a one-bedroom. At Thanksgiving, Canadians won't even be able to cook their traditional meals. This government's incompetence is intolerable. Will the government finally give a gift to Canadians and call elections? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague, whom I greatly respect, spoke about what is intolerable. Well, what is intolerable is hearing the Conservative leader talk about the difficulties faced by Quebecers, while at the same time saying that he will hurt them and punish them by cutting the services they need. This includes funding for the school food program. Will my colleague advise her leader to actually meet with teachers and tell them that feeding students is Liberal bureaucracy? The